Hello and welcome to the D3 podcast. I'm your host, the one, the only, Sandman himself, with the one and only KLB. What's good, my guy?
It's good. It's going good.
Going good?
It's like 10 degrees here, so really trying to stay warm.
Hey, man, I feel you. I feel you. It was 66 and the next day it dropped to 33, feeling like 28. So I feel the pain. I'm going to short sleeves and then just pain overall. As you guys can tell, clearly we're missing two brothers. Is it a coincidence? I don't think so. We did trade Matt to the Cleveland Cavaliers for $1. The dollar's still pending. It hasn't gone to our bank account yet, so maybe we just got duped there. So sorry, Matt, you are been sent to Cleveland. John, you've been sent to Dallas to cry with your Luka and the Doncic's at this point because it is just sadness in Dallas. And I'm okay with that because San Antonio, we were riding high somehow. We're just having a good time there, all right? You know, no fiesta this season, but it's a fiesta in our hearts at this point. But let's get into this, Kevin. We did see some of the recent All-Star voting updates. Believe per usual, LeBron James was the leader. On the other side, who was the leader on that? It wasn't Giannis this year. It was their boy? It was their boy, wasn't it? Who was on the East side?
Wasn't it? Well, Beal was leading the guards, right?
Yeah, he was leading the guard. Oh, it was Durant, obviously. Durant was the number one on the East side overall votes. But it's looking interesting. A lot of players have come out saying that, especially with LeBron, saying that this is like I don't want to be here. I have zero energy in terms of going to the All-Star game, which is all of a sudden, it came over like this past week and a half. They were like, hey, let's just have the All-Star in Atlanta, who has been notorious for having drastic COVID issues and allowing a crowd too. Giannis came out saying hey, we got to follow the big dog. If LeBron says we're not going, then, I don't have zero energy. So, and along with that, Kawhi, James Harden, they just said no one wants to be here. Fuck the All-Star because it literally doesn't matter at this point. I just find it funny because the players who don't make it are allowed to travel, throughout America throughout All-Star weekend. But when it comes to the Super Bowl, they cannot even gather at all. I just found that very hilarious. I was just in terms of double standards at this point. What do you think in general, just the whole situation?
I think it's kind of ridiculous that they are policing when players can and when players can't do certain things to not violate COVID restrictions. Like you're saying, they can't meet up for the Super Bowl, but they want to meet up for this All-Star weekend. That's the dumbest thing, I think. And I think there are alternatives. We don't have to have everyone in the same place for the All-Star weekend. I think things like a virtual dunk contest could work. Having Aaron Gordon in his backyard or something, dunking over a car or some shit. I would actually like to see that.
No, I feel you. So ESPN, I don't know if you remember, ESPN once the season got canceled last season, I think it was a couple months in, they were let's have a dunk king contest. Yo, I don't know what it is. I'm just saying, when you're getting paid multi-million dollars, I don't know why you don't have an HD camera. It's almost as bad. We have better quality on this podcast, and we're not even trying. And these guys can't even keep a connection in terms of that. And it's just ridiculous. In terms of the All-Star game, do you think it's even a good idea to even host? I know it seems so drastic. I hear there are big financial gains, obviously, in terms of big advertisement. And overall, it is an owner's money pool at this point. Do you think it is necessary to go forward with this?
I think it adds way more risk than it does benefit. If you have all of your biggest stars, to all of the players that attract attention to all of your regular season games in one place in a concentrated area that haven't gone through intense COVID protocol up until this point, I think that's a recipe for disaster, because if one person gets it, everyone's gonna be at risk. And then if one person, even not a star player, but someone there gets it, everyone's going to be in trouble for contact tracing. And then, like we were seeing with KD, like they're going to get pulled out of games, and then people are going to get pissed and not watch the games because all of the stars are out. Like, it's just, I don't know. I don't like it. I think there are better things they can do for it. I don't know. Maybe have like, I think having like a Rising Stars game or something like that would still be fine. Because then that's players, like, it sounds bad, but like, it's not going to pull away attention if some of the like third stringers like have to go through COVID protocol, as long as they're still safe. I don't want them to actually get like COVID and get sick, but I don't know. I think there's ways to get around it and still do stuff and still have that income, but not put your entire player base at risk.
So you're saying we sacrifice the young bloods and use them as fodder in place of the in place of our entertainment. This is basically a purge, is what you're asking at this point. Okay, I see you. But for me, it's kind of baffling, and I'm really disappointed by the NBA just in terms of like rushing a decision like this. As much as I like Adam Silver, I think he's been much of a sellout in my opinion. I think he's like completely like caved to the owners and in terms of like whatever needs they do. And I get that. I get there's like a balance between player empowerment and then some of this, but these guys, like a lot of these guys did just like run it back after like a month and a half. Like they literally had like no break. And obviously we're not athletes and we don't endure like the pain, sweat, and tears that go into like the grind to get back into the season. But like I'm just saying, for someone like LeBron who is like 36 to go back at it and still be like almost MVP caliber, that's nuts on his opinion, on his side. But like there's a lot of vets who probably can't do that, or people who are just not in shape to really get back at it. So I just think it was just like no real consideration, even though they talked to the Players Association and it seems like the Players Association was cool with it. It just seems like it was just like a rushed idea just because it was just a money grab at that point. What do you think of the idea? Let's just exclude the All-Star game and we just make it like an all NBA concept. We just do it for the credentials, because I know there are like checkpoints for some players on their contracts that say, hey, you get a bonus if you make an All-Star team or you make the starting lineup and stuff like that. What do you think in just having no actual All-Star game or weekend itself, but just have it just for the credentials themselves?
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. I think that still motivates the players to like want to get into the All-Star, obviously, which I think is kind of the goal of having those bonuses. But I think it's, again, a bad idea to have all of those star players in the same place at the same time. And I don't know. I like that idea a lot, though. Yeah.
You know, I know we were talking about KD. Friday night playing against the Toronto Raptors, KD was listed not eligible to play due to contact tracing. All of a sudden, I think in the afternoon, the results came saying that it was like a negative result for himself. So they said, okay, yeah, jump into the game. You know, fantasy-wise, he balled out for what he could. Then I think entering the third quarter, they get a call saying like, yeah, you tested negative, but there was a positive reading on the other guy, so we got to pull you out again. Luckily, the Nets players all otherwise were okay and not related to the contact tracing to Kevin Durant, so they're cleared to play against the Philadelphia 76ers this weekend. However, you know, we did lose KD. He did tweet like 30 minutes after being out, like, free me. And I thought that was hilarious just because, like, I mean, it does seem like hypocritical on like the NBA standpoint of like what their actual policy is. It seems like it's a lot of back and forth between player owner, and like, do we keep the season moving while also having COVID cases? And it just seems like there's no real sense of direction of how to like actually tackle these issues. In terms of just the Nets overall, Kevin Durant will probably miss multiple games. Do you think this will actually be detrimental to the team moving forward, or do you think just it's the regular season and it's okay if we lose those?
No, I think, well, I mean, at the end of the day, yes, it is the regular season. It is okay if they lose those a little bit. But I think the more time the big three of them, of KD, Harden, and Kyrie, have to play together, the better they'll be in the postseason. So I think every regular season game that they don't play together, that's a lost opportunity for them to kind of grow that chemistry a little bit. And I think that's the one thing that they really need to work on. that we're seeing. And obviously, when they don't have KD, they lose to the Raptors. So,
No love, no love, and I think it's detrimental, especially because he's probably your best defender on this team. So there's actually like no defensive presence. Kyrie looks like very lackluster in that game. Like he's going to be out with a right index like sprain. James Harden was like super pissed during the press conference, saying like, "I don't know what the NBA is doing. Like it seems ridiculous, like pulling a guy mid game. Like you should have been all in or all out at that point." And we all know James Harden's been, involved with lots of contract chasing, especially in Atlanta, notorious. For some reason, they want to bring everyone to Atlanta again for the All-Star game. Unsure why, but I will have to see. This next team has a lot of concerns, and I think we'll talk about them in a little bit. But let's do some rookie watch here. I think it's Kevin. I think it's time to put some respect on LaMelo Ball as being the youngest Hornets player to drop 30 points in a game. Got 34 points, 14 for 27. Do you respect this man now? Do you respect this Ball?
Listen, I don't think it's okay. I will give him more respect than I've given him thus far. He's better than Alonzo already, but that's still not a very high bar. I don't think for a player like him, it's that hard to be as good as he is when your second best player on the Hornets is Gordon Hayward, who is he's like the playmaker of the team, which is kind of weird. But and then below Gordon Hayward, the next best player is who? Terry Rozier. Like is that it? That's your team. So of course, like LaMelo's gonna ball out on that team because that team is nothing. There is no one that should be scoring 30 points a game except for him. So everyone's gonna try and get the ball in his hands, and then he's gonna do some like whack ass reverse layup or some shit and score. But they still, I don't think they're that good of a team. They still got destroyed by the Jazz in that game where he scored 34 points. Like the Jazz were embarrassing them the entire game. I don't know. I think he's better than what I give him credit for sure. But I still think he's way overhyped this year. And I think people just wanted someone else to hype up after Zion, and they're clinging to LaMelo, and I don't think he's as good as everyone thinks.
Interesting. But you do know that the Hornets will have a higher chance of making the playoffs than supposed Zion Williamson, the Pelicans. And look, they lost to the best team in the NBA. The best team. Once again, I emphasize the best team. The Utah Jazz being the best team. We can't forget. Like the Hornets are trash. I agree. Gordon Hayward is glass. We will never support him and never invite him to this podcast. But I think the stat line was still impressive. Zero turnovers, especially for like a LaMelo Ball. I think it was a big. I think just overall for me, that's more impressive than the actual scoring ability. I think that was there, but for me, I think it was going to be on pace in terms of like a Russell Westbrook where the turnovers just keep building up, or like a James Harden when you do too much ISO ball. I think we're seeing LaMelo Ball being actually more team based and team oriented, and he finally got the starting role. Yeah. And for someone that's going to be getting the position of maybe like a small forward as well, I think we're actually going to see him being utilized to multiple positions, but I think will be really good. So you were confirming that will LaMelo Ball be better than Lonzo Ball in the long term?
Yes, I think so.
How much money you got?
$2.
$2? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. All right, that's pretty good. I'm genuinely impressed by LaMelo. I think what was coming out of him, right before the draft was, he's just showboating and everything like this. And I think that's the opposite of what have we seen of him. And I think maybe he's humble because Jordan drafted him. Maybe it's just because you're on a trash team, and then so you're the only guy that's you're stat padding at that point. But I mean, these guys are just right outside of the 8th seed at this point. And I think he could already be a bigger impact than Kemba Walker was, who was there for like 8 seasons. So it'll be interesting to see. Do we think LaMelo Ball will be Rookie of the Year?
I think at this point, yes. Because both it's kind of a popularity contest a little bit, and he is playing well. He's getting these 30-point games, which is really good for a rookie. He's shooting well in general. He's making good, flashy assists. He's got a lot of highlights too. I think that helps Rookie of the Year a lot. Like we saw last year with Ja and Zion, those were both very highlight heavy players, and I think that's why they were so popular for Rookie of the Year too.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, and I think especially with the injury like James Wiseman, and also just being shadowed with like just the Warriors themselves, it's difficult there. I mean, the next bet is probably Tyrese Halliburton with Sacramento. The team is kind of hopeless.
And I think he's really good. He's honestly, I think he'll be a better player long term than LaMelo even, but he's not a highlight heavy player like LaMelo or as much as LaMelo, I think. So he's not going to, I don't think he's going to even get as much consideration close to as what LaMelo is.
I feel like I need to replace this portrait behind me with a whiteboard just of like all of our ridiculous notions here, because I feel like so far you've been on pace with a lot of things, and we're going to jump into it really soon, especially with that Clippers Nets game. The Paul George call out has been perfect. I think it's been phenomenal. I'm feeling this train here. The Phoenix Suns very lackluster in their overall performance. Good thing John Mayer not here, because we can say whatever the fuck we want at this point. All right, this is our podcast now. No, I'm just kidding. But speaking of big changes and teams that need to be good, and with all your predictions coming true, trade deadline coming up March 25th. I was reading up and I saw that 93% of the players in the NBA are actually available for trade, with only 29 having some sort of restriction. I think those 29 are actually just like rookies at that point. So it's going to be interesting. Overall, which teams do you think are going to be making the biggest splash throughout this trade deadline?
I don't know. I'm torn on who I think will actually make a trade and who I want to make a big splash. Like, I want the Mavs to make a big trade. I think they need to change something. They have Luka Doncic, who is probably a top 5 player in the NBA, if not at least a top 10 player in the NBA. And they're doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. The rest of their team is garbage. I can talk as much shit as I want because John's not here. KP is such a disappointment. We were talking before the pod, like Knicks might have even won that KP trade now that we're seeing, because KP is so abysmal over time. So I really want to see them do something, but I don't know if they can trade away KP for more than what he's worth. Like, I don't know if they can win a trade with that. And I don't know if they have other assets that are worth anything. Like maybe Tim Hardaway that they could trade, but then they couldn't get something better than that, I don't think, for Tim Hardaway, you know?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think the Suns are very like middle of the road. Like they're very okay. I thought it was gonna be kind of either like they were gonna be way better this year or like pretty bad, and I think they like kind of stayed the same as they were last year. I think they could use a little bit of a change of pace, but I don't know. It might just be kind of growing pains with this new team with Chris Paul and things like that. So I would kind of like to see them make a little bit of a change. And then maybe Pelicans. I think that Pelicans could get someone for Lonzo, and then that might be one other piece that they need to actually be good, because I mean Brandon Ingram and Zion are really good, and they're just not playing well. So I don't know what's going on.
Okay. You have any team on the East that you think needs some changes?
I don't know. I think the East is actually impressing me this year. I mean, Hawks are inconsistent but good when they're on. Mm-hmm. Raptors are getting better. The beginning of the season was shaky, but Spicy P stepping it up. He's been looking good the past couple games, which I think is all they needed. And now they'll start to get that climb in a little more. Wizards are I don't even know what to say about the Wizards. That's just, it's sad. It's sad. I want them to do something, but who wants Russell Westbrook at this point? He's so inconsistent, and when he's bad, he is a detriment to your team. And Bradley Beal doesn't want to go anywhere, apparently. What happened to the Heat?
Yeah, the Heat fell apart. I mean, they did lose Jimmy for quite a bit, so it was mostly a lot of injuries. Jimmy, Goran, Tyler Hero, and I just think that they did benefit from the bubble, just because a lot of people did get knocked out, and I think it was just the resurgence of Bam being like an actual big defensive man, stopping Boston and stuff like that. If you put the same Miami team from last year, all healthy against one of these East teams, I don't think they would make it past the second round. There's no way. I mean, I think Philly is like genuinely very scary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to question the Bucks. Bucks are hit or miss in the playoffs. Obviously, Brooklyn now like an offensive juggernaut presence. The only big man that can actually play defense is Bam, and you have to bring him outside to guard Kevin Durant. And that doesn't work. Probably the team that could probably have a chance against is Boston, just because they're just very inconsistent in terms of how their scoring ability.
Yeah.
One of my big moves was Miami has to make a big move because this team shouldn't be losing this many games. It's once again, I know there's all these reasons, but I just feel like there's teams out there that are having those problems and still able to get wins and chugging out, an actual good team moving forward. But I think going along your line, I think New Orleans has to make some big moves. And people are saying it's like, oh, it's the first year. But it's the first year for a lot of things. Steve Kerr won a championship the first year. Tyronn Lue won a championship the first year. Is that the coach thing? Not necessarily. But I think the thing is Stan Van Gundy does rub people the wrong way in a lot of cases just because he's an aggressive coach. He reminds me of a Tom Thibodeau. Like, it's kind of like, you do it my way or fuck you, And I'm still going to hype on the train. I don't think Brandon Ingram and Zion are actually a really good combo. I think they're very polar opposites in their way they complement each other. And I actually think Lonzo and Zion is actually a better duo overall, independent of scoring. I think it's just in terms of utilizing like Zion's skill. As much as we like Zion's dominance in the paint, I think he's not that good otherwise, just because he's not doing anything else. Like, it's like, please tell me why he's any different than Ben Simmons at this point, because there's a scoring difference, but at least Ben Simmons has the point guard ability to contribute to other points, and they're winning, right? I mean, yes, it's Joel Embiid, but they're still winning, and it's not showing here. And so it's really lackluster from a defensive standpoint there. Dallas, think about it. Dallas is second to last in the West. That is nuts, right? That is unbelievable. I believe the projections I was hearing from John was the third seed, and they're second to last. That's horrendous. I don't know. Delusional, some may say, in all these cases. And I'm happy. I'm sad for Luka, but happy as a Spurs fan. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. But let's move on to the game of the week. Last week, we lost the great game between Nets and Clippers. It was a 3v1 last episode because we just thought the Clippers were going to be pure dominance. And then we hear this outlier from KOB himself saying that you guys are ridiculous. I don't know what we're talking about. The Brooklyn Nets are going to be destroying this team by 20 points. It almost got there. It didn't get there, but they got the dub. So, Kevin, have the floor. This is all yours.
I told y'all. That's it. Like, I told y'all from day one, Clippers are trash. But listen, when you have this offensive juggernaut of a team, especially at outside scoring, like KD, Kyrie, and James Harden, how can you stop that? That's unbelievable. The Nets shot 57% from the field. Like,
that's phenomenal.
They were just making all the right shots, and I think that's the biggest differentiator between them and the Clippers. Like, Paul George is good. I mean, like he got 26 points, he got 6 assists, 4 rebounds. Like, he had a good stat line, he had a good game, but he sometimes just takes some of those shots that aren't good shot selections. You know what I mean? Like, whereas the Nets, it felt like this game especially, they were taking a lot of the really good high percentage shots which is what you need to do to beat a team like the Clippers that's really like good defensively and things like that. Again, Kawhi, awesome, really good. Nick Batum, actually pretty good. I was impressed with him this game, especially like lately he's been pretty good, especially like I would have thought at the beginning of the season, I would have thought Luke Kennard would have been better than Batum, and Luke Kennard's playing like 3 minutes a game, like 1 point a game, and it's just bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Nets just absolutely killed it. They didn't even need a big man to do anything. DeAndre Jordan played like 15 minutes. They didn't need to play big at all against this Clippers team, which is this is their ideal matchup, and that's why I think they did so well. It's against a relatively small other team where they can just go off. Like, yeah, the Clippers have Serge Ibaka. Okay, then the Nets are just going to take deep ass 2s and 3s all game and just score over literally every 6 foot tall person with KD like almost 7 feet, just like yelling over someone.
Oh, that's true.
It was awesome to see that my prediction was right. Granted, it was a close game. I might have predicted it was going to be a less close of a game, but I think the Nets are a bit too strong and the Clippers are a bit too overrated for them to actually.
Yeah. Is that the clickbait? Clippers overrated once again?
Always.
Always. I think the biggest surprising stat was Kevin Durant only shot 1 3-pointer. I was just like blown away. Like 11 for 13, that is phenomenal. Like, yeah, I couldn't ask for anything better from Kevin Durant, who's had the most spectacular comeback probably in NBA history at this point. You know, I think the surprising factor was Kyrie Irving being the actual one to step up in terms of scoring. I think we do realize that his capability. It's really interesting because these roles are very interesting. James Harden became very true point guard. I mean, the guy had triple double. That was crazy.
I love seeing this side of James Harden. This like playing. He's what Russell Westbrook hopes to be or wants to be. Like he's the triple double machine or even double double machine that actually benefits your team. He plays team ball, and that's why he gets these crazy stat lines. It's not that he's trying to get that crazy stat line, but it's a result of how he plays rather than the result he tries to get, which I think is the difference between him and Westbrook. And I love watching it. It's awesome.
No, yeah, I think James Harden very accepted the role. Okay, I have a question for you, and I think this is actually a very important question because we criticized LeBron James 10 years ago, 11 years ago for the decision. I agree that the way it was presented was probably wrong, but we still criticized like the whole bot versus built concept. Kevin Durant did the same thing. We criticized that because he sold out to the best team in the NBA. Why is this different? Why do you think this is different, or is this even different compared to those?
I think it's not really different, but I think our perspectives on it is different because I think we're NBA fans in general have kind of like after the decision and after things with Golden State and KD and now this, like I think it was who was it? Bill Simmons was like getting mad at people when they say they hate like super teams because he's like, no, you don't hate super teams. You're always the one to cheer for the super teams, and that's why they always get created because they're so strong and so popular. And I think NBA fans are starting to realize that and accept that a little more. And now things like this are less outrageous because yes, this was kind of like a bot super team, but I think it's NBA fans are starting to chill out and be like, yeah, it is a bot super team and it's awesome. Like it's really fun to watch. And I think that's fine. I think that's a totally acceptable answer.
No, I agree. And I think it's like, and we grew up with it, playing like 2K and stuff. Like our dream is let's just get the best players and then just run over everyone. Yeah. And then it's funny because then when we go into real life, we're like, that's dumb. Why would this guy go here? It's like we don't want the superstar talent. It's going to ruin my team. And I think maybe we're the old heads, and maybe it's just me, just being like very like team oriented. Like I like to be team focused. But I think most fans now are just very fan oriented. They're very fan focused compared to most sports. It's just like, hey, I like the Kobe. I liked LeBron, I like Kevin Durant. Like I just like these individual players, and they just turn out to be on the same team at that point.
Yeah.
So I just find it very like ironic that it's just like we criticized this like 10 years ago, and now we're like, yo, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened like in NBA history. And it's like, I just found it very interesting. I think a bigger takeaway is kind of like what you said, is that this team was still able to pull out of the game without any real defensive presence. I mean, they don't even start DeAndre Jordan anymore. They play small ball with, uh, Kevin Durant basically playing center at this point. They're playing what the Warriors did, except they just have all superstar talent basically at this point, at least with the two big guys. And the thing with the Clippers is I think there's less on Kawhi, but I think Paul George, I in my opinion, I don't think Paul George can ever lead a team again. I just don't think he has the capabilities. He had it in Indiana, he threw it away, and he went to go join another team with OKC, and then immediately betrayed them, and then joined another superstar with Kawhi Leonard. But we saw the game that Kawhi Leonard did not play, the one game that Kawhi Leonard missed, uh, was the game they lost by 50 to the Dallas Mavericks. And look at the Dallas Mavericks. They're not that good. This team should not fail that way if you have the quote unquote superstar talent. And the thing is, Paul George is probably just as trash as his shoe game, because his shoes are whack. They're the least garbage thing I've ever seen in my life. But that's a side note. I got to throw some shoe game in there. And Paul George should not be a Nike member. I'm just telling you, that is not good for the brand. But let's get into the next week's game, Boston versus Utah. Kevin, who's going to be the most dominant player on both sides of this?
I think this is tough. I'm interested to see this game. I mean, obviously, Jason Tatum has been going off. He's been killing it this year. I love watching him play. But I think we've been talking about the last couple of weeks. Jaylen Brown is really almost the glue of this team at this point, which I wouldn't have expected to say at the beginning of the season. And I love it. I think he's been playing really well. And as long as he is as consistent as he has been, I think the Celtics could definitely take this game. Just keep the ball out of Kemba's hands. Don't let him shoot, and you're good.
Dang. Hey man, I mean, Kemba Walker did basically shut out the Clippers yesterday. He was probably the reason they somehow won. But I agree, the amount of shots he should be taking is not that much. He doesn't have the legs so that they basically Isaiah Thomas him, and maybe it's the just desserts for doing him dirty basically at this point. But I was just gonna say I think Jaylen Brown is actually the glue piece in all of this. It used to be like the Marcus Smart, but I think Marcus Smart didn't work as well as like Draymond Green. Is that there was a lot of bark, but not as consistent gameplay. And I think Jaylen Brown has that. He starts flexing on everyone, and I think that's what you kind of need for this young group, where it's just like until you have a real veteran presence or at least accountability, I think you just need just the ferocity to just we're gonna be the best. That's how we're gonna do it. All right. If you don't want to be a part of this, get out of here. And I think that's the mentality you need to have moving forward. Jaylen Brown was injured and didn't play against the Clippers, and they still won. So that's very interesting to see from that standpoint. But I think from the Utah Jazz standpoint, I think we still have to give props to Rudy Gobert, who didn't show up against Nikola Jokic, but I think overall still has that defensive, or as James Harden just says it, just being tall. I think just being tall does have benefits, except for Kristaps Porzingis' case, where it's actually just detrimental. But so something about that Utah Jazz team that just clicks everything. And I think I hit it last week. And I think they just keep running it back with just like one like bench factor. And I think it's finally clicked, especially with Mike Conley. What are your thoughts on the Utah Jazz?
I love Mike Conley this year, especially. I think you're right. Rudy Gobert he's perfect at his role. I don't think he's worth the contract, but he's perfect at what he is paid to do. He's paid to get rebounds, get points under the basket, get like Andre Drummond, just get rebounds, get super high percentage field goal shots, like easy. He's great at them. I think what the Utah Jazz have, especially over the Clippers, I think this is night and day. The Utah Jazz have a decent bench, they have decent depth where they have 3 or 4 players outside of their starting lineup that can at least get points consistently and get rebounds consistently and things like that. The Celtics do not have that at all. The Celtics bench is, I I don't even want to talk about it. I think it's really bad this year. I think they have like 6 players that are good with their starting lineup, and then the rest of their team is just not great at all. And so I think that if that's where the Utah Jazz have especially a significant step up above the Celtics, but I also think the Celtics don't have a really strong big man to do anything against Rudy. So I think Rudy can just get boards all day and get like offensive rebounds, and that's just going to give the Jazz another opportunity to throw it out to Donovan Mitchell or throw it out to Bogdan, and then just score big time. And yeah.
No, I feel you. With that being said, Kevin, who do you got winning this game?
I'm actually torn on this. I think I got to go with Jazz. I never thought I would say that, but I think I got to go with Jazz. But I think it's going to be a pretty close game. Probably pretty high scoring too. I don't think either team is great at defense. Rudy Gobert is defense-ish, but that's about it. So I'm thinking like Jazz like 120 to 115.
Okay. So you got them scoring pretty high. I'm going to go with the Jazz as well as being the best team in the NBA. Once again, best team in the NBA, best team in the NBA. I think the Utah Jazz are going to win by at least 15. I just don't see the as much as I like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown making a lot of the field goal attempts, they can have some really off games. I've seen that with Jason Tatum, who I think maybe it was just due to COVID, and maybe took a step back again. I need him to get back on the train because right now it's looking like Jaylen Brown is the carry for this team, the most reliable guy on this team. And I just think the Utah Jazz, they just have everything working. I think they have the perfect balance of what you need from a veteran side, what do you have from the Rudy Gobert side, and then what you have from a Donovan Mitchell. I think you just have them all finally coming together. And maybe COVID at the end of the day was the glue piece. Maybe that's what actually brought them together. All right. But with that being said, Kevin, send us off.
Thank you guys for listening to me and Sam, our podcast now. Matt and John are done. They've been traded. Again, Matt, have fun in Cleveland. Follow us on Instagram. I post fire memes all the time.
Thanks.
Definitely worth following just for that. So you're welcome. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Whatever social media you're on, we're on, maybe. Email us at thedeep3pod@gmail.com. We had an episode last week with mail time. Answered a bunch of questions that we got sent from basically one person, but that's okay. Listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, other apparently.
Other.
But yeah, thanks so much for listening. We appreciate anyone listening to this point. Have a good day.
Free me.